said, "How are you doing?" He said, "Well, I don't know. I think this medicine might be having a bad effect on me." A few more. There goes that happy ending.
Untouchable. The spiritual grandfather of country music. The laid-back outlaw who floated through scandal, heartbreak, and decades of fame with a guitar in his hands and peace on his mind. He smoked with presidents, jammed with rock stars, and forgave just about everyone who wronged him. Or so we thought. But behind the bandanas, the laughter, and the haze of smoke, there's a side of Willie most fans have never seen, a side that remembers every slight, every betrayal, every artist who crossed a line they couldn't uncross. Now, at 92, with nothing left to prove and no one left to please, Willie's finally telling the truth. About the collaborators who turned their backs on him. About the showbiz giants who sold out the soul of country music. And about the friendships that ended not with a bang, but with silence. Some of these names are legends in their own right. A few were once his closest friends. And one or two, you won't believe he ever hated them. But once you hear the stories behind the names, you'll understand exactly why Willie Nelson never looked back. Toby Keith. The patriot that pushed too far. To the outside world, Willie Nelson and Toby Keith looked like natural allies, two country giants with strong opinions and bigger audiences. But behind the scenes, things were anything but friendly. Willie didn't hate Toby for his voice or his success. He hated what Toby stood for and how loudly he shouted it. The breaking point came after a benefit concert in the early 2000s. Willie had signed on thinking it was about supporting veterans and healing divisions. But when Toby took the stage waving flags and turning the show into what Willie called a political rally in disguise, everything changed. Backstage, he confronted him. "This isn't about right or left," he reportedly told Toby. "It's about the music bringing people together." Toby shrugged it off. Willie didn't. He started pulling out of any event where Toby was on the bill, quietly but deliberately. In private, he called Toby's music a commercial wrapped in camouflage. He believed it cheapened the pain of the people it claimed to honor. And perhaps worst of all, he hated the arrogance, the idea that patriotism belonged to just one voice. Years later, Toby tried to mend fences, sending a message through a mutual friend. Willie never responded. From that moment on, he refused any joint appearances or collaborations. When asked later if he'd ever work with Toby again, he just said, "There's enough noise in the world already. I don't need to add to it." But this feud wasn't about politics alone. The next name on Willie's list, that one cut far deeper. Because it came from a man he once called a brother. Merle Haggard. Brotherhood broken. They were the kings of outlaw country. Two legends who carved their own path through the polished corridors of Nashville. Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard weren't just collaborators, they were brothers in rebellion. But sometimes, even brothers turn into strangers. And what ended their bond wasn't a headline-worthy blowout. It was something far quieter, and far more personal. For years, they toured, recorded, and stood shoulder to shoulder as symbols of defiance. But behind the scenes, tension brewed. Merle, ever the traditionalist, started mocking Willie's growing public advocacy for marijuana legalization. At first, Willie laughed it off. But then Merle took it to the stage, slipping in snide remarks mid-performance, calling weed a lazy man's crutch, while Willie sat just a few feet away. It wasn't just a joke. It was a line in the sand. And Willie, who built a movement around peace, didn't take kindly to being ridiculed by someone he once considered family. The final straw came during a radio interview in the late 2000s when Merle offhandedly said Willie was more of a mascot now than a musician. Willie never responded publicly, but those close to him say he quietly cut all ties, canceling a planned joint album and removing Merle's name from future festival invites. To Willie, loyalty meant everything, and when Merle crossed that unspoken line, there was no going back. But the next feud wasn't rooted in history. It was a modern disaster with a rock star who brought way too much chaos into Willie's world and left behind nothing but smoke. Kid Rock, too wild for Willie. Willie Nelson's lived through bar brawls, backstage madness, and decades of touring, but even he wasn't prepared for the whirlwind that was Kid Rock. At first, it seemed like a bold crossover, the redneck rocker teaming up with the outlaw legend. But what started as an unexpected pairing quickly unraveled into one of Willie's most regrettable collaborations. They met during a charity event in Nashville where Kid Rock pitched an idea for a Southern Rebellion anthem, something gritty, loud, and genre-bending. Willie, always open to experimentation, agreed to a studio session. But once inside, he was met with what he later described as noise and ego. Kid Rock showed up late, blasted music over Willie's vocals, and treated the session like a frat party instead of a creative space. Willie tried to bring it back to the music, suggesting changes and tone shifts. Kid laughed him off, saying, "Just let it be raw, man." But to Willie, raw didn't mean disrespectful, it meant real. And what he saw in that studio wasn't real at all. It was performance. It was chaos. By the end of the day, Willie walked out without saying a word. The track was shelved. When asked about the session months later, he simply said, "Some fires are better left unlit." And just when he thought he'd seen the worst of creative clashes, the next name would blindside him, because it came from someone who once called him brother. Someone from the inside. Juan Jennings, the Outlaw falling out. They were the heart of outlaw country, the untouchable duo who rewrote the rules and flipped Nashville on its head. Willie and Juan were more than bandmates, they were a movement. But even revolutions have fractures, and for Willie, nothing hurt more than watching his bond with Juan slowly break under the weight of pride, pressure, and power. At first, it was creative tension. Juan liked structure. Willie thrived in chaos. In the studio, Juan would grow frustrated with Willie's laid-back style, missing takes, improvising lyrics, refusing to rehearse. "You're too stoned to play straight," Juan once snapped during a recording session. Willie laughed it off, but he didn't forget. As their fame grew, so did the rift. Juan felt Willie was drifting too far into his own world, working with other artists, leaning into activism, and worst of all, stealing the spotlight. Friends say Juan accused him of abandoning their outlaw roots in favor of becoming a symbol, a brand. The final blow came during a joint interview when Juan jokingly called Willie a hippie in cowboy boots who forgot where he came from. Willie smiled, but his eyes didn't. After that, they drifted apart. No blow-up. No statement. Just a long, uncomfortable silence between two men who once trusted each other with everything. But Willie's next feud wasn't built on silence. It was sparked by glitter, glam, and a pop country star who made Willie question whether country music still had a soul. Shania Twain, too much shine, not enough soul. Willie Nelson doesn't hate pop music. He just hates when country forgets what it's supposed to be. And to him, no one symbolized that shift more than Shania Twain. She wasn't just breaking records, she was breaking tradition. And for Willie, that was unforgivable. At first, he admired her talent. There's no denying Shania could sing. But as her fame exploded, Willie started to see something he didn't like: the sparkle, the choreography, the crossover hits engineered for radio perfection. He once remarked, "It felt more like Vegas than Nashville." The tension boiled over at an awards show where the two were seated just a few rows apart. Shania won Entertainer of the Year. Willie clapped politely but later told a close friend, "Entertainer maybe, but that ain't country." He felt her music was polished to the point of emptiness, all glitter, no grit. They crossed paths backstage that night. Shania smiled, extended her hand. Willie nodded but never stopped walking. That cold moment, brief as it was, said everything. He never criticized her in interviews, but he never mentioned her again either. And while that feud was born of disappointment, the next one came from pure heartbreak, a friendship shattered by one careless comment Willie never saw coming. Chris Christopherson, the words that never healed. If there was anyone Willie Nelson trusted with his truth, it was Chris Christopherson. They came up together, played the same dusty stages, wrote anthems that defined a generation. They shared smoke, stories, and a vision for what country music could be. But one moment, one offhanded remark, turned decades of friendship into quiet resentment. It happened during a political fundraiser where both men had been invited to perform. Willie, known for his activism, had spoken out on issues close to his heart, from farm workers to marijuana reform. Backstage, in front of a small group of artists and reporters, Chris muttered, "Willie's turned into more of a mascot than a musician." It was supposed to be a joke. Willie didn't laugh. That single sentence cut deeper than any review or headline ever could. To be dismissed by a stranger is one thing. To be belittled by a brother, that stings forever. Willie never confronted him directly, but from that day forward, things changed. No more duets. No more shared sets. No more long phone calls swapping lyrics and memories. Just distance. And while Chris may have forgotten the moment, Willie never did. "You don't always bury the hatchet," he once said. "Sometimes you hang it on the wall to remember." But the final name on his list, that one was different. It wasn't built on friendship, rivalry, or betrayal. It was about integrity and a man Willie always believed was selling a story he never lived. G. Brooks, the showman Willie never trusted. To most of the world, Gar Brooks is a country legend, a record-breaking, arena-filling superstar with a megawatt smile and a catalog of hits. But to Willie Nelson, he was something else entirely, a polished product packaged by Nashville, designed for mass appeal, and in Willie's eyes, disconnected from the dirt, pain, and grit that gave country music its soul. They shared stages more than once, but Willie always kept his distance. He watched G from the wings, noting every pyrotechnic cue, every rehearsed emotional moment, every perfectly placed tear. It wasn't the performance that bothered him. It was the intent. "You can't sell struggle if you've never lived it," Willie once muttered after a show. The tipping point came during a tribute concert where G was chosen to perform one of Willie's own songs. He delivered it with flair, big vocals, and roaring applause. But when he walked off stage and gave Willie a scripted compliment, Willie reportedly turned and said, "Next time sing it like it meant something." From then on, Willie quietly distanced himself from anything Gar-related. No duets. No co-appearances. Not even a name drop. Because to Willie, the soul of country wasn't in the lights, it was in the scars. And while he rarely spoke these grudges out loud, at 92, he's no longer interested in playing nice. Because for Willie Nelson, the truth has always sounded better than silence. Willie Nelson has spent his life floating above the noise, the calm outlaw with nothing to prove and no one left to impress. But even legends have limits. And after decades in the industry, he's finally shedding light on the names he never forgot, not because of what they accomplished, but because of what they represented. Toby Keith, Merle Haggard, Kid Rock, Juan Jennings, Shania Twain, Chris Christopherson, and G. Brooks. 7 names. 7 stories. 7 reminders that even a man built on peace isn't immune to pride, betrayal, or disappointment. These feuds weren't all explosive. Some were whispered. Others ended in silence. But for Willie, they each left a scar, a lesson, a line that couldn't be uncrossed. He didn't hold these grudges out of spite, he held them out of principle. Because to him, music was never just a business, it was a way of life. And if someone disrespected that life even once, they weren't welcome back. In the end, Willie Nelson didn't just sing about truth. He lived it. And at 92, he's still reminding the world that authenticity matters more than applause. So now we ask you, which of these names shocked you the most? And do you think Willie was right to walk away from them? Let us know in the comments. Hit that like button if you want more untold stories, and don't forget to subscribe, because some legends still have a few secrets left to tell.